Yes, hello out there. Welcome to Mark2Mark. We have got a new session for you here, and we're going to be talking sport as usual. It's a conversation with a difference. We always insist on that, and that is because the two of us here, that's Mark Namanya over there and myself, Mark Sally, have been there, done that. We have got quite a rich menu for this edition, and there's plenty we're going to discuss, but I'll break it down in simple terms. We're going to pay tribute to Cedric Babu, a fallen hero. We will say something about the preparations for CHAN, that is the African Nations Championship that is coming to Uganda this August. And then we'll do a bit of talk about domestic football to go with the CHAN, and we'll be celebrating Vipers there. And they are double. Then we'll go down to the NBA, talk basketball, that is in the US. It's come to the finals, and we'll be saying one or two things about the Thunder and the Pacers. We'll also talk about golf. Mark is our in-house guru. So we've got the golf guru. We talk golf every single edition. And then away from the golf, we'll talk about the European transfers. That window has been flung open, but it looks like clubs couldn't wait. And we'll be delving into who's got what and who might get what and what that all means. And then we'll wind it up with encouraging you guys to come and bet with us, because we've got one or two things we think we should predict on, and perhaps you need to take a cue, as we are the experts, are we not? Anyway, never mind. Now, Mark, I'd like for us to start with Cedric Babu and pay tribute to him. Look, it was very sad, the passing of a sporting legend in Uganda in every sense of the word. But after a few days of reflecting and mourning and everything, you realize that we only live once. And when people build the kind of legacy that Cedric did, then we choose to celebrate them. At least here on Mark2Mark, we'll do that.
Oh yes, Mark. Cedric was quite a character. Cedric was a very talented sportsman. Mark, obviously, you shed more light on that, having gone to the same school with him. But I was talking to people who are his classmates, his peers, William Blake, the IOC member, Edgar Biama, Jim Izire, Brian Ravogo, Dennis Midesevugao, and they'll tell you that for Cedric, tennis came naturally. You know, he had everything about him was effortless when he played the game. And I was told of this famous clash with Paul Busharizi when Cedric was in O-level, I think in Senior 3, and I think Bush was in Senior 5 or Senior 6.
Senior 5, Bush was my classmate.
And obviously the O-level students were rooting for Cedric. Bush was the favorite because he was the older player and was a good tennis player at that. And I'm told Cedric cleaned him on the court. Like, he disrespected him. He gave him absolutely no chance in that game. Must have been around either 89 or 90.
It was 1990. I was courtside.
You're right courtside.
There,
wow,
so,
interesting.
Yeah.
So,
yes, yeah.
But Cedric was, he was a talented tennis player. He had his clashes with Bobby Ndiwami and Komakech in one of those glorious eras for Ugandan tennis. But beyond that, Mark, Cedric was sport. Cedric, we know what he did with kinetic management when they introduced the Friday Night Lights with those Chamringers, and it was one of the properties which went somewhere in turning around basketball and the popularity. Beyond that, Cedric had a 21st century mindset to how sport should be run. Not just in tennis and basketball, but all around as a subsector. And of course, he was one of the people who was behind that, should I call it a revolution, at the Uganda Olympic Committee when they were removing Rogers Dungu, who had tried to extend the tyrannical methods of the late Major General Francis Nyangweso. So the Cedrics and Dennis Galabuzis, Ambrose Tashobias, William Blix and the likes, Don Rucaris. So you can accuse Cedric of many things, but not of having been passionate about sport, having loved sport, and having defined his life as a sportsman who excelled at it, and also led the Uganda Tennis Association with distinction.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That was quite the roundup. Yeah, when you talk about Cedric and I being in the same school, it is very much true. It's very important, of course, for me to point out that I was his sports minister. So we were in St. Mary's College, Chisubi together. I was 2 classes ahead of him, and I was the sports minister at school. So Cedric is somebody that I saw grow as a sportsman and somebody with whom I associated as a friend. And for us in the sports fraternity of SMAC, we were always tight-knit. We all knew each other and all.
Yeah.
Because I tried my hand at everything, virtually everything, obviously, I was always I was bound to run into him. So when you talk about that famous clash between Cedric and Paul Busharizi, I was actually courtside for that match, and it was quite the draw. Paul Busharizi had come in from Kenya, where he'd got a very good tennis education early in his life, and then he'd gone to Mbarara.
So he shared something in common with Cedric, because Cedric was born in Kenya.
And then Paul Busharizi spent a lot of his formative years there in Kenya. Then went to Mbarara, and then from Mbarara came to SMAC. We came into SMAC in the same year, Paul Busharizi and I. But so me as their sports minister, one of the things I used to do was to organize the school track when they had to come to Kampala to compete at Lugogo with the rest of the country in the schools, tennis championships and everything. Yeah. So the best tennis players in SMAC when I was sports minister were Cedric Babu, Paul Busharizi, and Victor Rumanyika. So those 3, along with a few others, I would organize the school track for. So I came with them every single time they came to Lugogo to compete. And
are you saying the school track was taking only 3?
Those 3 and a few fans. No, there was a few other players and then a few students as fans and everything. We used to make those trips, but I remember quite vividly that I used to accompany these guys to Lugogo. And one of the things, of course, that stood out was it was a very good era for tennis, for young players, especially because of what was happening in Jinja.
Yeah.
Ginger had such a budding sports environment of academy that was nurturing cricket players, tennis players, everything, virtually name it, volleyball, football, and everything.
Yeah.
And so there were some famous clashes between Cedric and Busharizi and Victor Rumanyika with the guys from Ginger. Renato Sebi, the late Charles Yokwe, Shaban Luanga, those guys. These are the guys, those are the matches that used to light up Lugogo.
And the names mentioned grew up around Ginger Club. Because Ginger is a place whose architecture I have on my palm.
Yes.
And even the late Brown Tolit was actually a very good tennis player.
As well,
in as much as he eventually ended up in golf. Charles Yoko, you mentioned, won the Uganda Open, but he was also a tennis player and a golfer,
Yeah, I think most Ugandans actually know Yokwe as a golfer.
Yes, they knew him as a golfer, yes. But they know Yoko as a golfer, yes.
Yes, but I think golf even came later in his life than the tennis I'm talking about. Because when they were kids, Sebi and Yokwe, I think they were even brothers.
Yes.
Then there was a few other players, like I said, Shaban Luang and others.
Sons of the late Sadio Nito, Uganda's greatest ever golfer.
Yes, they were Nitos, all of them. They came in there and they were really, really good. So they had some epic, I'm talking epic battles with Cedric on center court at Lugogo. I'm talking 1990 and 91, between 90 and 92, when I was in SMAC and Cedric was 2 classes below me. Cedric, of course, came from a class of very many sportsmen. It was a very vibrant sporting class in SMAC. It's the same class in which he played rugby with Hakiza. The big Hakiza, one of the greatest players we've ever had.
Andrew Hakiza. Yes.
Yeah, Andrew Hakiza. It's the same class in which he's the same class he shared with people like Dennis Mbide, guys who are football guys who, it was difficult in school times, especially in our times, for guys several classes lower to make, say, the school team of football or any other sporting discipline, but football mostly. But those guys were playing with us on the school team because they were that talented and that good that year. So it was a special year, and it's the same year, of course, that the same class that they shared with.
And Mark, typically
with General Mohozika and Rugaba.
I don't know about the schools of today, but I was in Aminango College. The fact is, you had to be very exceptional to be in the school team when you're in senior 2, senior 3, when there are people who are in A-level, who are bigger bodied, who are obviously more experienced. There had to be something special about you.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be in the national team.
Yeah, you had to be because the A-levels dominated everything.
Yes.
The bigger the class, back in the day, the more chances that guys got on there. So you'd get a few average talents making the school team ahead of some very talented young S1s and S2s and S3s because they had to bide their time,
Yes.
grow through the ranks,
Oh, yes.
go through the hierarchy. We had different training pitches at SMARC where guys, to make the main pitch, to be a part of a training on the main pitch, you had to have played through the ranks of all the others.
It's something with the Milango, yeah. Because
so we even had names for them.
To play at Bugembe,
Yes.
it was called Bugembe.
Yes.
Bugembe was for the A-levels. You had to just be an A-level. There's no way you'd be an O-level and then you're going
And
to
then play there, yeah.
Bugembe, yes.
But that class, the Cedric's class, with the Mbides and Romanyikas and those guys, and the Andrew Hakizas, and it was a special one as far as sport is concerned. They were very talented. So, and typical of us kids who grew up in that era, we played different sports and excelled at a few. I mean, I did, but we're talking Cedric here. And Cedric also did play. I mean, you'll find pictures of very old pictures of him lining up with the rugby guys because he did play. He would have his hand at rugby, as well as at basketball and all. He was of a good height. But tennis is where he was best, he was most talented. And back then, I remember, for me, the comparisons I'd already made. I'll tell, for people who want to know the kind of tennis player Cedric was, I'll say that Cedric played on court with the temperament of Goran Ivanisevic and maybe Marat Safin. Marat Safin came later, but that is the temperament with which Cedric played. A very naturally talented guy, big server. Cedric was a big server in an era where we didn't have such big serving in Ugandan tennis. Most of what happened, because Ugandan tennis players grew up on clay
Also, when you talk about those two gentlemen, he must have smashed his racket a couple of times.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's why I'm talking about the temperament here. Because we grew up in that era where it wasn't such big serving because kids had grown up on clay courts. All around Uganda, what we have is clay courts, and most of the world actually have clay courts. There are fewer grass courts than anywhere, and than anything else, more hard courts.
And fewer stud courts.
Yeah, exactly. So they used services as just the start of a rally. Most of the guys I'm talking about, even the kids from Ginger, Cedric was a big server. He had height on him, and he could serve huge, like Goran at the time. Goran was left-handed, Cedric was right-handed, but the comparisons were so many. And temperament was, yes, Cedric smashed quite a few rackets. Yeah. He lost his cool quite easily because he was super competitive. And it's the same. And the natural talent was like that, like I say, of Safin. He was so good, so early, you just wondered where he picked up this out from. Eventually, it led to him actually getting a tennis scholarship into the US because Cedric left Uganda for the United States of America on a tennis scholarship. Wow. It was something unheard of back then.
I know Mark can talk about Cedric till tomorrow, but the thing is, I'll mention two things about Cedric.
Yeah.
In my encounters with him.
Yes.
And there are quite several. But one, obviously Cedric was articulate.
Yeah.
Well-spoken, and he's someone who, I loved exchanging ideas and in interviews with.
Yes.
Because he came across as someone who was forthright, someone who was really knowledgeable on whatever topic was discussing in sports, be it issues to do with maybe the amounts of money which had been apportioned for football against all the other disciplines, the National Sports Act, the sports policies, and so forth. So he was the kind of guy, it was a journalist's dream for me because you called him, he picked. If he didn't pick, he would always call back. When he gave you an appointment, he always kept time. And he was that sort of person, quite a decent human being. In the words of Brian Rabogo, he was quite a decent human being in every aspect. So the people who've been making all sorts of opinions and allegations about him, obviously they don't know the person they're talking about. But secondly, a couple of years ago, Cedric tells me that he'd wanted to meet the president for a very long time. So he asks his friend, his classmate, General Mosken Rugaba, to make an appointment. And General MK makes the appointment for Cedric with the president.
Yes.
And they met in Rachtura. I meant to understand that when you meet the president in Rachtura, he's at his most peaceful. He'll give you all the time you need.
So I hear. Yeah.
You're more likely to get what you want from the president if you meet him in Ashtura, as opposed to Entebbe or Nakasero. So he has 1.5 hours with the president. 1.5 hours. Many people fight for 5 minutes with the head of state or 10 minutes. He gets 1.5 hours with President Museveni. And he's telling him, Your Excellency, there are many things which sport can do to transform this country, because the bulk of the Ghanaian population is of people who are below 30 years. And I think sports is one subsector which appeals to them, which can entice them. And if we did so many things around sports, we can draw their attention into employment, into supporting the subsector, to create a living, to give them direction, to take them off drugs and all these other vices. And but we need to do A, B, C, D, and F, G. And I don't think maybe as the government, the NRM government has given them sufficient time and attention to do the things we're supposed to be doing. And I think sports is a multi-billion-dollar sector in which we can, there's so many ways in which we can leverage around it to offer hope and direction to the young people. So the president listens and listens and listens. So after 1.5 hours, at one point Cedric said, I wondered whether this man was listening to me, because he was looking at the skies. He wasn't dozing. I could see he was listening, but he was not saying anything. So eventually, after 1.5 hours, the president calls his son and then tells him, I've listened to this young man of ours, this son of ours, take him to that place of ours. So Cedric is confused. So they come back with General MK from Rashtura to Kampala. So they drive apparently to one of the hospitals, military hospitals. And when they got there, the president, Cedric, showed him people who had been obviously wounded in the battle, people who had been trying to pacify places in the region. And the message to Cedric eventually learned the message was that everything you've said is important, and I acknowledge it. But as head of state, I have more pressing issues which I must handle. Once I handle these, then I'll give attention and direction to what you're telling me. But I don't want to believe that Cedric's message was in vain, because when you see all the monies which have been redirected to sports, in this period, Mark, as you understand, the stadium infrastructure developments and Chan and Pamoja and Terrieta and etc. You want to believe that maybe, just maybe, because this encounter was a couple of years ago. It wasn't very recent. So maybe Cedric's efforts were not in vain.
No, I agree with you, Mark. They can't have been in vain. There's so many people who have, in one way or another, transmitted that message to the president and the first lady, her being the Minister of Education and Sports. And at forums like those, there are people who got one-on-ones like Cedric. There are people who have used occasions like gatherings where the president was honoring successful sportsmen and all. People like the Cheptegeis and Kiplimos and Kiprotiches and Kipsiros have done this. So there have been so many. So when the voices are that many saying the same thing, ultimately it seeps through, which is why.
And of course, a voice like Cedric's was obviously very powerful because Cedric knew how to articulate his points.
Absolutely.
It was very, very categorical, very clear about what was needed, and hit the nail on the head. And sometimes was brutally honest before the powers that be, which maybe is not going to be as easy for a Cheptegei or a Dennis Onyango or all the other guys who've done
the message. That is true, Mark. So ultimately, those voices built into this, because the president, in so many of the speeches in recent times, over the last 2-3 years, when he's been either honoring successful sportsmen coming back from the Olympics or World Championships or All Africa Games or Commonwealth, or whether it's been when he's launching, say, the construction of Hoima Stadium or Akibwa in Lira and all, he's confessed to how sports was never a priority. And he has given those same reasons he was talking about. Security issues and the need to pacify the region and things like that. And how ultimately, though now, he believes that he should turn to sport. When you talk about Cedric and articulation, Cedric was a very articulate, very intelligent man. Sometimes actually you didn't know it until you actually had one-on-ones and had his insight and his ideas. And he was also a man of good grooming. Most
Yes.
of the clips that have been going around, most of the pictures you see and the videos and all, are of a very well dressed, sharply dressed fella who likes his style. I've seen him in videos with music videos
Yeah.
of Ryonga and whoever. Some of them which I did not even see before,
Yeah.
but I've seen those, and that was the Cedric, because then he got into the entertainment industry through Kinetic.
Yes.
But I just wanted to take you back to the tennis beat, Mark, very quickly, and tell you that you spoke about Bob Ndibwami earlier. So there were clashes he had with Bob Ndibwami and the Ginger Boys and all. But later, when he got into tennis, its administration and everything, he actually revived the game, because the game had died out a little.
Yes.
Because in Cedric's time,
Yes, there was competition and there was stagnation.
yeah, stagnation. Because in Cedric's time, there was a time when we competed in Davis Cup tennis, and
Yeah.
Cedric played for Uganda in
Yeah.
the Davis Cup competitions and all, when some of these guys came to town.
I remember Sagisan
Sagi
was
Sagisian, yeah.
66 in the world.
When he came
here and
to
competed,
Uganda, yeah. And there was, what is the Greek Cypriot?
Nick.
Before him, there was another, but I remember.
Yeah.
But never mind. So then, when he got into administration, he helped revive that. First of all, the juniors,
Yes.
that ITF program,
ITF
which
program,
was
yes.
a juniors program, which he helped so that they could start coaching young players and everything, and then get back into the competitions. So after his clashes with the Ndibwami generation and everything, he helped groom Duncan Mugabe,
Yeah.
David Oringa,
Yeah.
Simon Oyela, that new generation of tennis players that came up.
Yeah, even David Olobo before the Ryangas. Yes.
Before those all those kids have gone through Cedric's hand, and he's had a say in how they've come out as very talented young players who have then kept Uganda tennis torch shining. At the time when he emerged, when I'm talking about 1990, and he had started before that, before I joined SMARC, but I'm talking 90 to 92 when I was in SMARC.
Yeah.
When he emerged, Uganda, the tennis world in Uganda, the names you talked about were Patrick Tibbs and John Oduke and Patrick Tibbs. Those are the two biggest names. And then you had the Ofuyuru family. I don't know if you heard of them.
Yeah,
because they were multi-talented guys.
Yeah, badminton,
tennis, and everything. Yeah,
Eric Gilbert.
Yeah, Gilbert. Those are the guys. That was the generation after whom Cedric took over, and that generation took over as the best tennis players. But he's helped groom these guys, and then he's turned out to be a leader, an innovator, a mentor, a coach, an administration man, a manager, apart from just being a player. So at NCS, we've been paying tribute to him because we have something with the public. We're going to share with the public at NCS. And this is how I was framing the wording for our members, for Cedric, as all of those things. So he was Mr. Tennis, he was Mr. Sport. And I think Mark will wrap it up there and say, rest in peace.
Oh, yes. Rest in peace, Cedric.
Okay. Now, let's move on quickly. We had to pay a good tribute to Cedric. Let's move
Absolutely,
on to Chan. Mark.
It was befitting.
It was befitting,
for what
yeah.
Cedric achieved and accomplished for sport, yeah.
Yeah, let's move on to the Chan. We have the kickoff is just a couple of months away.
Yeah, kickoff is August 2nd. Nothing has changed about it. This week, there was a meeting involving the three host countries, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania. It was in Nairobi, involving all the three sports ministers, all the three federation heads, and all the secretariats of the three countries to iron out the nitty-gritties of the tournament ahead of kickoff. I do know that I think 2 weeks ago, the CAF vice president, who is also the CAF the chairperson of Chan, he was in the country where they did site visits for all the stadiums
and the training grounds,
and the training grounds, and even the hotels,
yes,
to make sure that they tick all the boxes. I'm happy to see what Wankuluku looks like. Mark, Wankuluku used to be was in limbo for a very, very long time. Today, Wankuluku looks like a sports complex of sorts. I mean, you have very clean toilets, the turf is improved, you have floodlights, the place has got a facelift. And, and for me, these are some of the legacy benefits of hosting events of this nature. Yes. Because Wankuluku will forever look the way it is, or even better. It will never go back to the setting in which it was in.
No, Mike, imagine there. I'm a guy who grew up in Najana and Kombi and supported Express FC. So Wankuluku for me was like a home ground because all I needed to do was to walk down from Stella through Kaboa, and
Yes.
I'd been Wankuluku. I never ever drove there. I never rode a border. I mean, in my world there were no cars at the point when I was growing up in the 80s, and Express used it as a home. So I watched it through all those years. Wankuluku with a terrible pavilion for a stand. In fact, that pavilion even came later. It was terrible stands, the worst changing rooms in history, and a totally underutilized piece of sporting real estate.
Yeah, because they had the land. Wankuluku had the land.
Yeah, even the perimeter
acreage
fencing,
was huge,
even the perimeter fencing outside, as well as that around the pitch. Those things only came after one terrible battle between AC Villa and Express, in which even Moses Sali, who was sports minister at the time, was squeezing under a bench.
97. The famous Bautu controversy.
Those controversies. Yeah, they cancelled the story of that Filippo Bunyi goal.
Yeah.
But anyway, never mind. So to see it looking like this now, to see Chambogo looking like that and all, I agree with you, his legacy.
To see Kadiba, hosting the Uganda Cup final. Right now, you have, the infrastructure in the country certainly is in a better state than it was before Chan. And then, obviously, Nambole is good to go.
Oh, yeah.
Nambole is good to go. Yeah. And the reports I'm gathering is that Nambole could even be in contention to, who knows, host the final, wait and see.
Yeah, Mark, I was there last week for training for security and safety.
Yeah.
By CAF instructors. They were down here, Dr. Christian and Zakaria, to train police and the guys in charge of security on the FUFA and LOC side.
Yes.
And then also one or two subcommittees were incorporated. That's why I represented the Spectator and Fan Committee.
Yeah.
And looking at Nambole, I was looking at it, I'd only been there a month earlier to watch Uganda versus Guinea and everything. But looking at it when it was empty, when I'd gone for the training and all, the things that went through my mind about the transformation of that stadium were like, this is a spectacle.
Yeah.
The guy
97 billion shillings is not pocket change.
Absolutely. Yeah. The guy I went with hadn't even been there for the Guinea match and other things. He was just helping me out with one or two things I was doing. And so he was stepping into it for the first time in a longish time. I think he hadn't been there since before COVID. And he was in amazement. So when you say that it could be in contention to even host a final, I don't see why not.
Yeah.
That's how good it has become. But and attending that security and safety workshop with the CAF guys and all, I learned so many things, of course, about, I've always been, Mark, somebody who has been, like you, been around stadiums in the world, bigger stadiums, better stadiums and everything. I've had these experiences of everything they talk about, accreditation, restricted zones and everything that you walk into and all, and matches. But I was always on the side of looking for journalistic angles, coverage, or looking for fans' experience as somebody who's going to enjoy it and things like that, if like when we were travel together and everything. When you listen to the guys from security and safety, they give you a totally different perspective to match day.
Yeah.
And the things that have got to be done so that people enjoy like that
Yes.
used to.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Without even thinking about their safety.
Oh, yes.
To keep people alive, they start from that angle. Which is, for me, I start from an angle of having fun and experience. And they start from an angle of keeping people alive because they take it that seriously.
Yes.
We've not had big stadium tragedies in Uganda, but they've been in Africa. The biggest ones have been in Europe, the ones which led to all the changes in safety and security.
Yeah.
Most of them by the way.
We've had some terrible ones in Africa. There was the one which killed over 100 people at Ellis Park a couple of years ago.
Yes,
in
South Africa.
Then there was one in Ghana, Asante Kotoko and Hearts of Oak, also a couple of years ago. The most recent one, I think, was last year, which was in which country? Guinea?
Guinea, yeah. I think there's been another one in Congo as well.
Yeah, another in Congo as well.
In Congo earlier.
And listen,
Guinea,
there's nothing which is as devastating as life, because you cannot substitute life for anything.
Yeah.
So it is very, very important that stadium security and safety is actually the most important. I could argue of all the should I say committees and the emphasis
on that.
You can get everything wrong, but not safety.
Yeah, and I liked back the fact that FUFA have been working with police and stadium management, say of Nambole, with Haji Jamil Sawanya and all for a long time. So they're used to these things.
Yeah.
But to see, and now that the police was of course incorporated on lock because of that.
Yeah.
To see these guys talking about their experiences before and how CAF standards are different and the things they have to do differently now and all, for me was a very good thing, a welcome thing to see how they were going to work in tandem, already working in tandem and everything. But I was also, I'll tell you, now when I look at Dixon Okello or Haji Sekabira or Humphrey Mande from FUFA and all, I'm looking
or Jamil Sawanya himself.
I'm looking at them in a different light now because this is things that I've been going through. They're also CAF instructors,
yes,
because they've been at it and done for a long time.
Yeah.
So I look at them differently now. I'm taking them more seriously, the importance of what they do.
Yeah, than you did before that.
Before this whole workshop. But yeah, in essence, generally, Mark, I think Sean, I think we are set as far as the facilities are concerned.
Yeah.
And you talked about the hotels because I remember, I think after that CAF visit, it was announced that Serena, the Sheraton, and then 4 Points at Sheraton would be the official CAF hotels here.
Yeah.
That's high standard. And I thought that we have a few more if they needed more. I believe, and all of them in the same area, I believe can all work.
Yeah, but of course, just about each and every other Ugandan can cash in on the Chan and Pamoja bonanza, if I may call it that way, because if you have your Airbnb, obviously there are fans. Not all fans are going to be staying at 4 Points and the Sheraton and the Serena. If you have your Airbnb, there are people like when we travel. When we went to Gabon, we had an Airbnb and with a couple of other Ghana journalists and worked for us. Even when we went to the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, we had an Airbnb.
Yeah.
So
those are many. Those are many. And Chan being a Kampala affair, because when AFCON comes in 2027, it will spread around the country. So we'll have to be doing Hoima and perhaps Lira and everything. Yeah. But Chan being a Kampala affair, those B&Bs are many.
Yeah.
And like I say, even hotels for the other people,
Yeah.
just within the same vicinity.
Yes.
I mean, outside of those three that are official CAF designated, you still have Running Period there, you have Speak, you have Golden Tulip, you have Protea there, both Skies and the one in Kololo. You have got, say what? You've got a Normal within the same vicinity. You've got Fairway. They're all over the place. They're all over. So we do have those, and then you come further down to the until you get to the B&Bs. There are many. But so I believe, Mark, what is left is now, after all those things have been put in place, is for your committee and my committee to now then take the hype to the rest of the country.
Yeah.
Which is what we intend to do. I know that you guys have a plan in place for a lot of things. I know that on our side we've got a trophy tour. It will help to boost the awareness about this, about the tournament across the country, because we intend to do that across the country, all through Kampala and Wakiso and Entebbe, and then across the country, and then several other, and then fun parks and things like that. So I think while it looks like we might have left it late, I think that eventually by kickoff day, if all Ugandans will be sold.
So for the football mad Ugandans, Chan kicks off on August 2nd and ends on August 31st. To be played in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And you don't have to be just a football Ugandan. You could be someone who either loves sport or just wants to be part of history, because it's never happened before. And believe in me, you don't want to be left out on a legacy tournament which is going to be hosted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and in terms of the economics, you've talked about this on different episodes before, Mark.
Yeah.
Everybody can cash in. There's because when you have an influx of sports tourists, like the ones we expect, both the official, the teams, and then down to the fans and all.
If you have a bar, if you have a restaurant, if you have a pub, if you have I mean,
if you have goodies to sell,
yeah.
if you've got accommodation,
Yeah.
if you're in the transport business, whether you have big buses or just a border, I mean, everybody's going to be working.
Oh yes.
And then of course the tourists, because these guys are going to, our visitors are going to learn about how much Uganda has to offer.
Oh yes.
Because believe me, they might have had a few things, but they don't know.
They don't know.
You don't know Uganda until you actually experience it. So,
this is the best country in the world.
Yeah, it's good that Peter Gwang joined the other sports ministers and that meeting you're talking about. And they're talking about a Pamoja visa.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking forward to that, because once you ease travel for our visitors, if they can come in with very few encumbrances, I think they will flock here, and then they will get used to the idea of coming to Uganda.
And Mark, there's something else I've got.
Or East Africa.
There's something else I've got to say in black and white.
Yeah.
We've been privileged enough to visit other African countries, but none of them is like Uganda.
No. I've been all over the continent, thank God.
Yeah, none of them is like Uganda.
No. In fact, when the West Africans come here,
they might want to stay. They might want to stay.
Several of them. We already have big communities, say, from Nigeria. We have a big community from Nigeria and Uganda. Not so many of the others. But when those guys come here and stay here for a month, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is.
They may not want to leave.
Some will stay and wait for AFCON, if you like, for 2027. There you go, Mark. Let's leave Chan at that. But before we leave football, quickly, Vipers and the double.
Well, Vipers proved that they're the best team in the land. You don't win the league by mistake. The Uganda Cup, you can win the Uganda Cup despite not being the best team in the land. But they basically removed all those doubts by winning the double. They beat KCA 2-0, first ever game played at Kadiba Stadium. It was a packed stadium, and I think it will be, like I said, an additional plus for a big plus for the football infrastructure in the country. KCA had their spells in the game. Clearly, Nelly Maged has done a good job in terms of building the team to play in the way KCC wants to play. But Vipers got another goal from Livingston Molondo after a defensive howler by the KCC goalkeeper Mugolofa. And from then on, Mark, Cup finals, when a team takes the lead, the Cup finals are decided on small things. So KCC tried to press, and actually they could have actually gotten a goal back, because Ashraf Mugube struck a thunderbolt. Listen, he used all his might, and he packed a belter, but it crashed off the woodback and came back. Had it gone in, maybe the final would have been different.
Turned out differently, yeah.
So, but Vipers, of course, are the more experienced team. They are used to winning, and they've got some guys who've experienced the big stage. People like Sentamu, who struck a beauty for the second goal with 5 minutes to play. They've got guys like
Newton Carissa.
They're very experienced players.
Hilary Mukundane at the back.
Nicholas Wadada. Turach had a very, very good game in defense. So Vipers.
Watambala in the middle. These
guys
have played.
They play together.
Yeah. And Vipers for
so, I mean, it's been a big season for them. And listen, credit to Vipers, because after they sacked Kazarovic, the guy who eventually took them to the Court of Arbitration of Sport. No, it wasn't him actually who took them to CAS. But they went back and regrouped, stuck to coaches, Mumza and Luinda, and they've been with them. Apparently, they are both at the same level. They are both coaches. No one is above the other. And it's worked wonders for them, which is quite odd, because Lawrence Mulindwa is not known for being patient. But I think he entrusted them, gave them the confidence, and they delivered the goods. Having given them 200 million shillings for winning the league, I believe him is going to give them, I think, a couple of...
Yeah, because he gave them 200. He had given them 50 by the end of the first round, 50 million. So he gave them another 200. I think he just topped up on...
my sources tell me that he's going to give them an extra 100 for winning the Uganda Cup.
Yeah, he had talked of 50, so it might be 100. Yeah, I mean, in that excitement, I believe he will. So, and he's dipped into his pockets big time and kept these guys motivated.
I mean, and right now, Vipers, they've won, they've become a Salongo for the second time in history. So when you talk about Salongos, it used to be a prison for AC Villa.
AC Villa.
But
it was just an AC Villa. The Ghana football, because KCC and Express tried and failed over long periods, even their best times. But eventually, they did.
They became Salongos. But
Express
now
in '95 and KCC have done it in recent
so now
times as well.
Vipers are the fully certified Salongos of Ugandan football, and they'll be representing Uganda in the CAF Champions League next year, while NEC will be representing Uganda in the Confederations Cup.
That is the challenge now. Vipers have got to make a statement on the continent, which they still haven't in their years of dominance. Yeah, but it takes time. Yeah,
and we don't know. We wait and see. We don't know if he's going to stick with the two coaches. Let's wait and see. Because they've proven themselves on the domestic scene. Can they prove themselves on the African continent?
He has not been a firm believer in the abilities of domestic coaches in the past, Lawrence Mulindwa. But like you said, he's now bidding his time with these guys. Hopefully, he will allow them to take the team to the continent. So that's Vipers for you, Mark. Now, quickly, we move away from that and into the NBA basketball.
Yeah.
We got, and then there were two left.
Yeah.
I mean, after everything that we've gone through, all
OKC
the hassles,
and Thunder.
Yeah,
Who would have thought
OKC,
at the beginning of the season, the final would have been
Pacers.
Between OKC from the west and Indiana Pacers from the east? Certainly, I wouldn't.
No. Well, I was even on record. We made predictions in different forums, as you know what. And those two teams were not in the picture for the finals. I thought OKC just might do it, and the Cleveland Cavaliers in the east. But largely, I was going for the established franchises, the ones with the big boys. I was thinking Celtics, I was thinking Nuggets, I was thinking Warriors, and even Lakers. Now see where we are.
I mean, OKC, they look the part. They've got, is it Shai or Shia?
Shai.
Gilgeous Alexander, he's played like the MVP. I thought marginally, if it were me, Jokic, the Joker would probably have been the MVP
for the regular season.
For the regular season, but I cannot discredit the contribution and the worthiness of SGA. I mean, the guy has proved to be a franchise player. I mean, how he runs the floor, his mid-range shooting, his shooting from the three, how he makes the other guys around him better. And of course, right now, you look at OKC and I struggle to look at their weakness. They're big, arguably the biggest team in the NBA, and they've got bigs who are not just big, but these are guys who can ball. You know, Holmgren.
Chet Holmgren and Hartenstein, these guys.
And then they've got a good backcourt. They can play half-court basketball. They look the part. They beat the Nuggets in a tough series. Actually, I thought that the winner between Nuggets and OKC is probably going to win the NBA. I still think actually OKC are going to be the favorites. But listen, Pacers have not been picked from nowhere to get into the NBA Finals. They've got a bit of championship DNA in Pascal Siakam, who won a ring with the Toronto Raptors, and they've got Tyrese Haliburton, Mark, a guy who's been ridiculed by some, but he's been a key factor and was in the running for the Eastern Conference MVP.
In all honesty, he should have been.
Yeah,
it looked like the MVP was picked on Game 6 performance, and Siakam had kept them in the game until Haliburton took over in the fourth quarter.
And given the nature of this season's NBA, because no one gave, I wouldn't have put $1 on the Knicks beating the Celtics. I don't want to. I would never have fancied the Pacers to beat the Cavs.
Yeah, imagine, and that was after they knocked out Giannis.
Exactly, after knocked out Giannis.
They started with the Bucks.
So I fancy OKC.
The best team in the East was the Cavs.
I fancy OKC in the final because when you come through the West, and I still think the West was stronger than the East, in as much as I thought Celtics were probably the best team in the NBA before.
The Celtics the best team in the league, but Western Conference the
better conference. My man is in OKC. I would fancy them. But I do not rule out. I can't rule out the Pacers by any measure.
It's been a playoff of surprises.
Yes.
It's been a playoff of shocks, and so I understand when you say even if OKC are favorites, you can't rule out the Pacers being champions.
Yeah, and the Pacers have got Rick Carlisle, the guy who won the ring with the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when they were underdogs against the Miami Heat of LeBron James, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade.
Yeah, certainly. It's going to be tough for OKC. But OKC, why I call them favorites, Mark, in addition to what you just said, is they and I've tweeted this in the different series in which they've been winning. They've been killing teams. I've called it death by active hands. Their defense is suffocating. You're talking about two bigs in Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren.
They'll clean the boards.
But they also have tenacious guys. I mean, Lou Dort and Jalen Williams. These guys are monsters. Jalen Williams is two-way. He's a monster on offense. He's actually like almost the second option after Shai.
They're the best defensive team in the NBA.
Yeah. But defensively, they are crazy. They are active hands everywhere.
I would have loved to see a series between the OKC and the Rockets.
Yeah, and the Rockets. It would be
a physical
battle and everything. Yeah, so the Pacers are going to have to up it, because the Pacers are killers in transition, and it also starts with their defense. They get the stops, but they run the floor so quickly. Nembhard and Halliburton and the guys, they are crazy.
Yeah,
they run the floor really quickly, and they score in transition all the time. The OKC might not let them do that because of they too are stifling. They are defensive, and they score. Look, for me, Miles Turner up against the two bigs of OKC might be what decides this series, and I think that the two, I mean, they will overwhelm him. The two bigs will overwhelm him. The other guys might cancel each other out and all, but I see OKC winning it in 6. We'll see. Mark, and now
I have OKC winning it in 5.
Yeah, now and as we wrap up now, very quickly, what's going on with the European transfers? Man United.
I think the biggest.
We didn't expect that there would be splashing out in the first day of
I think for me
the transfers, and already it looks like they have 2 conquests.
The biggest conquest they've done is retaining Bruno, because Bruno turned down a huge deal, a mouth-watering deal. You know,
I think 200 million over like what, 1 year or 2?
Yeah, in which you're going to be earning £700,000 a week, no tax. I mean, that's mind-boggling. That's astonishing, Mark.
That's crazy. For a 30-year-old, it's basically you're being handed your retirement
package
in advance, and you're riding into the sunset.
I think for United, given the problems they've had this season, to hold on to Bruno is a massive coup, because lose Bruno, United was going to become another yo-yo team, because you can't lose your best player. Having finished 15th, it was going to be you're going to struggle in the market to convince any players that you have an ambition. You're trying to come back to where you belong.
I agree entirely.
So they've clung on, held on to Bruno. They've signed Matthias Cunha. That's a very big
signing.
A big signing for them. That's a statement signing.
Used to the Premiership, of a better quality than the players they have.
Oh yes.
And coming with a heavy price tag, but which is justified at 62 million. I mean,
it's justified if you could get. That's the kind of money United paid for Mason Mount. So I think Cunha is a much better player.
Cunha is top, a few notches above Mount, to be honest.
Many notches above Mason Mount.
Yeah.
And I think United is in the hunt for a striker. They've been linked to Brian Mbeumo, who is better than all the players they have. I do not know how Mbeumo is going to play in the same team with Amad Diallo, Mark. And Mbeumo is not exactly the out-and-out goal scorer United need, in as much as he scored 25 goals this season.
Yeah, he's a high-scoring forward, but not your number 9.
Yeah.
So he's in the... Basically, he's a 10 like Ahmad, he's a 10 like Garnacho, he's a 10 like Cunha.
Yeah.
Even if they get him, United will still need a number 9.
United need a number 9. United have always thrived with number 9s, the Van Nistelrooy types of this world. And
the Andy Coles and...
Dwight York. So,
the Robin Van Persies and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It's been like, since the days of Dennis Law back in the 60s.
Oh, yes. The only time they deserted from that philosophy was when Ferguson decided to play which was like a forward diamond of Rooney, CR7 and Tevez. And listen, with such firepower, you don't need that presence in the middle because Ronaldo offered it anyway.
Yes,
in the end, and Ronaldo is one of the greatest players of all time. So
yeah, you either have the 9 or you have scorers. I mean, there's a time when you had
scorers.
Canton and Mark Hughes and Brian McClare.
Yeah.
You didn't think any of them was a real like number 9.
It's the kind of thing which Barcelona became famed for. They didn't need any presence in the box. When you had Messi, you had David Villa, you had all these. They are just their movements and creativity.
Yeah, and Neymar and everybody. But eventually they had a Luis Suarez in there.
Luis Suarez, but who also wasn't exactly playing like a number 9.
Not well. At least wasn't a 6-yard player.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
6-yard box player. No.
So Arsenal. We have to wait and see. They've been linked with a move for Gyökeres, the kind of player I think who can fire them to the Premiership title.
Yeah. Looks like for them it's either Victor Gyökeres or Benjamin Sesko. And if they got either one of them,
either one of them,
be an improvement on what they have going forward.
And a big improvement on what they have.
I mean, these are guys who played Kai Havertz as their number 9 for a long time, and he's not a natural.
He's not a natural, yeah.
And when he got injured, he was replaced by Mikel
Merino. Not a striker.
A holding midfielder who did well, but
he did
he's not a number 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me, I think the most frightening thing, Mark, is Liverpool, because if they get Fran Vats, the Premiership is in trouble. He's a very, very good player, and he can only make them better. So they've lost Trent Alexander-Arnold. They've already replaced him with Frimpong. So Liverpool already, they look solid, and they are showing their ambitions by attracting a player from the noses of Bayern and Man City, which was unheard of. Yeah. I think. I mean, it's just we're just starting the special season.
This window has just started.
There are going to be many.
But you're right, Mark. Yeah. So Man United already splashing out because it looks like they're in a hurry. Arsenal only waiting, but Liverpool have flashed out. So have Chelsea.
Oh yes.
They've also brought the number 9 in Liam Delap, from Ipswich. And then outside of England, Real Madrid already and Bayern Munich already doing their business. When we come back next week,
I think Trent will do well for Real Madrid.
Yeah. When we come back next week. There'll be a clearer picture for us to discuss on those transfers, and because they have to do them quickly before the World Club Cup kicks off.
Yeah.
And then after that, the window closes.
And the World Club Cup actually kicks off next week.
Yeah, and then reopens later.
Yeah.
So when we come back next week for Mark to Mark, we will have a clearer picture of that, and we'll be giving you more of the same here. Right now, though, I need to tell you, Mark, that we've run out of time and we need to sign out. So on that note, I'll just say to everybody out there, get online, watch us, subscribe, comment, and do everything, and then come back next week for even more, because that more will also include our own, the beautiful, the one and only Pearl. Bye-bye.